These three once hot watch brands are slowly sinking. In this video, I'm going to be covering these three watch brands that were so hot at the peak of the market, but have since slowly started to decline in price as well as demand. In fact, all three of these brands, I really haven't heard people speak much of unless they're looking to sell the watch. But before we do that, guys, please do not forget to check out chronograbs.com, my new site where you can buy and sell watches at 0% commission and 0 listing fees. There's so many cool watches. There's hundreds of watches, and there's new watches posted every day. And the website does get a lot of traffic. So if you do have a watch you're looking to let go, try to post it over there. There have been successful sales, and people really are enjoying it, and maybe you will too. chronograbs.com. So, guys, let's jump right into the first brand, and this is going to, unfortunately, probably strike a nerve with some, and I do like the brand, but it's just not as hot as it used to be, and that's the facts. This is Ming. Now, Ming is a newer brand. I mean, it's a micro brand, but it's newer. It was launched in 2017 by Ming. He's, a somewhat notable watch photographer. I don't mean to kind of degrade him in any way, but he is a notable watch photographer that has worked for many brands and other brands outside the watch industry. And in 2017 he launched his brand, starting with the 17.01 watch. Now, why this watch was so hot so quickly was not only the increase in demand for watches and more people getting into the hobby and kind of this buzz and stir of the bandwagon that we saw in watch collecting, but really, the watch debuted at $900. Now, many of you out there are just not going to believe it. You're going to say, oh, wow, Ming watches, they're a few $1,000s and a great value. Well, in 2017, they were $900, and people went crazy. The design was cool. It was unique. It was futuristic. Everything about it screamed quality. The dials were nice. They used custom hands. It was so much bang for the buck, and watch collectors loved that. They went crazy. And Ming went on this rampage where you couldn't go a day without someone trying to sell us a Ming watch at double retail. When I had Del Rey watch, people loved these things. We would put them on the site and they would fly. I mean, some of these watches were climbing to $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 for the limited edition collaborations. But when things rise really quickly and go parabolic, there's a chance they can come crashing down quickly. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing here. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about, the way that they handled the brand or anything like that, or even the quality of the watches. But it's undeniable that people are not buying these watches, especially at retail, like they were. In fact, these watches just don't move. You can go on places like the forums, the different dealer websites, the web platforms, the marketplaces. The watches are sitting, they get price drops. And what I've seen, there tends to be a lot of lowballing for these watches as well. They're cool and people love them, but unfortunately, they do have to keep making more watches, right? I mean, they're a watch brand. They need to stay in business by making more watches. And so Ming has tried to release more expensive watches, and some people like them, right? They're nice, they're cool. They have some very unique movement designs and watch designs now. They're selling a higher caliber of watch than where they started from. But I don't know that that's going to necessarily be a sustainable kind of platform for them to work on here. I think, the brand is still very new, and to begin selling $10,000, $20,000 watches can be pretty tricky. But I hope it does work for them, but I'm just not too sure. But one thing still remains the same, and that is the demand for these watches has gone down substantially. And unfortunately, I just don't know how they're going to kind of return to the peak of their demand. Let me know what you think. Comments below. Now that takes us into another micro brand. This is going to be a Kurono Tokyo. Now, if you've been around watches for a while, then you may know that this brand was released by Hajime Asaoka in 2019 out of Japan. Now, he is a very notable and famous independent watchmaker that produces very limited run watches, very high-end, totally in-house movements that are just beautifully designed, beautifully executed, and finished to the highest grade pretty much possible. Really nice, pristine, well-made watches. And so they saw a demand, 2019, kind of all this demand for these micro brands, and, intelligently, they released the Kurono Tokyo line. Now, I remember at Delray Watch, we were selling these things as soon as we got one in. We'd pay, over retail, and then people would want them at almost any price. Now, we kept it reasonable, but some didn't. And some of these Kurono Tokyo watches were selling for several times the retail price, which is wild for watches, let alone a micro brand, right? Like the Rolex Daytona, several times retail. I get it. There's just such a large market for Daytona buyers, but for something so small and being so kind of niche and having it be a micro brand, sure, they produced in limited editions. People really wanted these. On the same token, people wanted to flip these for more money because we would get, a few people per day trying to sell some of these to us. And so they tried different tactics, different ways to kind of get your name on the list and all of that to kind of curb on this flipping. But regardless, where we are today is this is a brand that's rarely talked about any longer. It's almost like the buzz, it's almost like a meme stock in a way. I don't mean to say that the watches are, of meme stock value, but you just saw this massive surge and the fear of missing out and people loving these things. And then the demand just disappeared. I haven't heard anyone mention this in probably over a year, if not more. These watches kind of sit on Chrono24 and eBay. There's these big price drops. I don't know where they take it from here. Maybe they can kind of reinvent kind of their product lineup a little bit and start offering different things. But the watch market's not where it was at the peak, especially for micro brands, right? There's still demand for these, blue chip pieces, these certain Patek models as well as Rolex models. But when it comes to the micro brands, there's just not as much buzz as there was anymore. And that's partly because you can't sell it for what you paid for, right? If you can buy a watch, know you can get out of it, no problem. Yeah, well, you've just de-risked your purchase if you didn't intend to keep it forever. You just wanted to try it out. But that's not the case anymore, and it can be difficult to sell a Kurono Tokyo. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And that takes us into a brand that I'm a little bit disappointed in seeing, and I talk about this quite a bit, and this is Panerai. Now, Panerai was super hot in 08, 09. You had, Stallone and Schwarzenegger and everybody kind of wearing these watches. But this has been a brand that's kind of, waxed and waned in popularity over the years. And it's not always been based on celebrities, but sometimes Panerai just does something very cool, unique, and exciting where, people jump back in and they say, wow, this is actually a really awesome watch. And then, Panerai and Richemont produce a lot of them and they get on the market and then people kind of just lose interest, right? It's just something that happens. A lot of the watch industry is marketing and buzz. It's luxury goods. That's everything, right? We don't really need these things. They're fun toys. Okay, there's going to be one professional diver out there that's going to tell me they need their backup dive watch. But aside from that guy, these are fun things, and fun things come with big marketing budgets. That's just what it is. I remember when Panerai kind of reinvented the Luminor submersible, and they came out with it in a bit of a smaller size, more compact form factor, and these things, everyone was going crazy about these things, and then they had these unique colorways, and Panerai was hot again. But then today, it's, they're coming out with the same watches over and over again, just different reference number, different limited edition. Maybe the hands are a little bit different color. They come out with the Carbotech version of the watch. They change the hands from green to blue. They black out the watch. They do these little subtle variations. And the reality is, for a buyer, when you're looking at a Panerai watch from 5 feet away, they look the same. Oh, that's a Carbotech. Oh, well, which one? Unless you really look at it and look up the pictures online and, look at the reference, the details are so subtle. And unfortunately for them, what that means is because there's so many of them out there, it just can't be that hot because there's such an oversupply. People can like them, but the demand can't really get to where it once was unless they do something drastically to attract new people to get back into the watches and differentiate the product lines from each other, which unfortunately I don't see them doing any longer. Very cool watches, and I do like what they produce, but they're in a bit of a pickle here. They're kind of stuck into this form factor of a watch shape more so than particular models in the lineup. Let me know what you think. Panerai watches in the comments below. So guys, this has been 3 watch brands that were just so hot at previous times in watch collecting history. In no way am I saying that these watches are bad or anything. I think they're all like really good and nice, but it's just the reality of the situation. Things go up, they go down, and unfortunately, these brands are going down. So we'll see you next time. You've been chatting with John P.